In this module, we take our first look at the full pivotal politics model. Previously, we considered the Senate, and we saw that the key figure was the filibuster pivot. In this module, we look at how the House and President factor into the analysis. Remember that to become a law, a bill must either pass both the House and the Senate with a majority and be signed by the President. Or, if the President vetoes the bill, the House and Senate can override the veto by getting 2/3 of each chamber to agree to an override. We're going to look at both of these paths during this module, but since the first road is far more common, we'll start with that. The key to the full pivotal politics analysis is to take it one institution at a time. Work on the House, work on the Senate, include the President, and then combine everything. The combination is easy because everything is done in the same policy space. Basically, what we're going to do is use the same line to do every analysis. Then we can just combine everything in the same policy space. Let's try an example. We'll use the same example from the last module where we looked at the filibuster in the Senate. Remember, there were two stages. First, the Senate voted to stop the filibuster, and if and only if the 60 senators voted to end the filibuster, did the bill move to the second stage where a majority of the senators is sufficient to pass the bill. That first stage is essentially a vote on whether or not there will be a second vote. And we discovered that the key player is the filibuster pivot, the 60th senator, to vote to end debate. Here's the picture that we came up with before. And here's the policy space, just the line. Here are the status quo and proposal locations. Here's the cut point, and here's the filibuster pivot. Remember, Senator 41 this time around. Let's hang on to this picture, but put it a bit to the side for a moment while we talk about the House of Representatives. The House doesn't have a filibuster. Let me say that again. The House does not have a filibuster. But that doesn't mean that the majority can get whatever it wants. The leaders in the House have ways of controlling what bills and amendments come up for a vote. Specifically, there's a powerful committee that you've probably never heard of called the Rules Committee that decides much of this. But rather than make you deal with all of that, let's just use the Speaker of the House as a proxy. We're going to make the assumption, which is actually pretty fair, that the Rules Committee won't let something come up for a vote that the Speaker wants to keep off of the agenda. What does this mean for pivotal politics? In the Senate, to get a final vote, you need to get 60 senators. In the House, to get a vote at all, you need to get the Speaker. If the Speaker doesn't want the bill to come up for a vote, then it won't come up for a vote. So the first stage in the House vote is whether the Speaker lets it come up for a vote at all. Just like with the filibuster in the Senate, if the answer is no, then the status quo remains. That's what you see down this part of the tree. But if the Speaker allows a vote, then we move down this part of the game tree to the actual vote. And once it gets here, it only needs a majority. The House has 435 members, so you need to get 218 congressmen to support the bill for it to pass. We again add a final vote tree at the bottom to represent the second stage. And like always, we start here at the end and work backwards. Just like we did with the Senate, we look at the second stage and ask, if there's a vote for final passage, will it pass? How do we answer that question? Well, by now, this should be second nature to you. In fact, it's even easier now that we've already done the Senate analysis. Let's grab the picture of the Senate policy space and drag it back front and center. Now, directly underneath it, we draw a matching line. The status quo and the policy are in the same spot as before, so just put them down right underneath the P and Q in the Senate picture. Since the P and Q are in the same place, the cut point is in the same place, so we can include that easily on the House line as well. And as before, politicians on this side of the cut line will vote for the bill. The only difference in the line is that instead of 100 senators, we now have 435 congressmen. We want to know if the bill passes. So instead of getting a majority of the 100 senators, we need to get 218 congressmen. How do we know if the bill will get the majority? Well, just like before, we look for the median member of the House, number 218, and check to see how that congressman votes. Well, here's number 218, and that dot is on the P side of the cut line, so the median House member supports the bill. That means if it comes to a vote, it will pass. Now that we know what happens in the bottom part of the tree, we can erase it and replace it with the result. We know that the bill will pass, So the top game tree represents the Speaker of the House's choice. If he or she allows the bill to come to a vote, it will pass, and the new policy will be P. If the Speaker does not let the bill come to a vote, the status quo remains. What will the Speaker do? Again, now that we have the picture of the House drawn, it's an easy question to answer. Is the Speaker on the P side of the cut point or the Q side? Well, let's light up the dot that represents the Speaker and see. There's the Speaker, and that dot is on the P side of the cut line. The Speaker prefers the proposed bill to the status quo, so the bill will get a vote in the House. And we know that if it gets a vote, it will pass the House. So this proposal will in fact pass the House of Representatives. The next step is to combine the House and Senate analyses. This is really easy if you don't overthink it. Remember, we're doing everything in the same policy space. Everything happens on the same line. All you have to do is combine the lines. Here we can do it visually. Just drag them on top of each other. But when you do it with pencil and paper, it's easier to draw a new line. Just put the proposal, the status quo, and the cut point all in the same place as they were in the Senate and House pictures, and the supporters are still on the P side of the cut line. From our analysis of the two chambers, we know that to pass, the bill needs the support of the median members of both the House and the Senate, and then it needs the support of the Speaker and the filibuster pivot, Senator number 41 this time. That would be the 60th senator to break the filibuster. We found all of those people before, so we just need to add those 4 people to our new picture like this. Here are the 2 medians, here's the Speaker, here's the filibuster pivot. And is this bill going to pass? No, it won't get through the filibuster. The key to pivotal politics is that you have to collect all of the pivots on the P side of the cut line. Any one of these pivots can block the legislation. In this case, it's the filibuster pivot. So that's the House and the Senate, but there's one more piece to the legislative puzzle in pivotal politics, and that's the President. Now, we know already that this bill won't become a law because it won't get through the Senate, but we still want to look at how to include the President in the analysis. We're going to do it just like before. There's the same policy line, there's the same Q, the same P, the same cut point is smack in the middle between them. How do we know if the President will support the bill? Well, the President is also a dot on the line, just like all the congressmen and senators. That dot is the President's preferred policy, and if it's on the P side of the cut line, then the President will sign the bill. Where's the President's ideal point? Here. The President would sign the bill if it passes both houses of Congress. We can include the President in the picture that combines the legislative pivots by adding the President's dot to the combined line. Well, let's stop here for a second and look at this line. It has the President, the filibuster pivot, the Speaker, and the House and Senate medians on it. The most likely way for a bill to become a law is to get all of these pivots on the same side of the cut point. But the thing you have to remember is that you cannot really move these pivots. You don't get to pick your pivots. If the Republicans control the House, the Speaker is going to be on the right side of the line. If the President's a Democrat, the President's going to be on the left side of the line. You generally have to take these points as a given. That's going to be really important in the next module when we talk about gridlock. But for now, I want you to understand that these are the dots you want to find on the line. Then you figure out where the policy and status quo points are. If all of the dots are on the P side of that line, then the bill will pass. But if any are on the Q side, it's almost certainly going to fail. Now, I said earlier that there's a second way that a bill can become a law. The President might veto a bill but be overridden by the House and Senate. If the President vetoes a bill, it goes back to the House and to the Senate. And at that point, there's a new vote. To overcome the veto, both houses need to pass the bill again with a 2/3 majority. That means you need 67 of the senators and 290 of the congressmen to vote in favor of the bill. Folks, this is really, really rare. It almost never happens. But what would it look like on the line? How could this happen? In the example we have so far, it won't happen because the President will vote for anything that the filibuster pivot votes for. But let's say that we had a different status quo and a different proposal. Remember, pivotal politics should work for almost any bill or status quo combination. In the previous example, a conservative president, we know the President is conservative here because the President's ideal point is far to the right. supported a bill to make the law more conservative. What if we look at a bill to make the law more progressive? Let's suppose the status quo is here, very far to the right. The proposed bill would move policy slightly to the left. Where is the cut point? As always, it's halfway between the P and the Q. The first thing we need to do is figure out the pivots. In the House, it's the median and the Speaker, so those are the same as before. But the Senate median doesn't change, but the filibuster pivot does change. When the proposal is to make the law more conservative, you need to get the 60 most conservative senators on board. But this time, we're trying to make the law more progressive, so we need to get the 60 most progressive senators on board. This time, instead of getting Senator 41, the proposal needs to get Senator number 60. So the filibuster pivot for this bill is over here to the right. Lastly, we add the president to the mix, and we look to see if all of the pivots are on the P side of the cut point. This time, everybody except the president is in favor of the bill. So what happens now? The bill passes the Senate because the filibuster pivot and the median senator approve of the bill. The Speaker and the House median both like the bill, so it will pass. But the president prefers the status quo, so the bill will get vetoed. At this point, the proposal goes back to the House and the Senate. Now the bill needs 2/3 of the House and Senate to vote for the bill. So we look for Senator number 67 and Congressman number 290. And here they are. It looks like the Senate would override the veto because number 67 prefers the proposal. But in the House, the 290th Congressman is so conservative, she probably votes with the president to sustain the veto. Notice that in this example, we just had to tack on a couple of extra pivotal players. What's interesting about these veto pivots, as we call them, is that they only matter if there's a presidential veto. You only have to worry about them if your initial analysis shows that the president would veto the bill. Okay, so that was a lot of stuff to cover. We're going to give you a few questions to try out on your own to see if you follow this material. When you're done with those, the next module will take up the topics of gridlock interval and author control.